Mike Gordon, and welcome back to my perfect playthrough of Contra Anniversary Collection. And last time since we beat in Contra on the NES and Famicom, we are now ready to take on Super C for the NES. Red Falcon's back bigger and better than ever. 1 year has passed since the Red Falcon's invasion. Peace had returned to Earth and all seemed well until one fateful day. A cryptic distress signal was sent out by General Howe, who was attending a military exercise with the GX Army on the South Front of South America. Our allies, the GX Army, they suddenly turned on us. Their eyes, those weren't the eyes of humans. Perhaps, sensing something had gone seriously wrong, leaders of the Earth Federation government dispatched 2 of their best Contra soldiers, Bill and Lance, to investigate the matter. Following the signal, Bill and Lance jumped on the chopper and headed to the Earth Federation base where the joint military exercise took place. Found the base in ruins with no sign of life. Suddenly a soldier attacked the two. Eyes filled with madness. A pale blue skin, he looks like a human, but those eyes don't lie. His soul is long gone. Bill opened fire at the soldier. Ooh. Finally I can take my time. As Bill's shot hit their target, an abomination of a creature burst out of the soldier's chest and slipped away into the shadows. No way! It's a face hugger! Looks like our friends from outer space are back for a visit. Lance cocked his gun and smirked defiantly. Let's give them a warm... Let Bill welcome them. I should have done the Arnold and Stallone voices. So yeah, let's see. Let me guess. Perfect playthrough conditions. You guessed it, just beat the game. And I'm not have to worry about the Contra code again this time. And also, just like last time, the NES version of Super C is much longer than its arcade counterpart, which was actually titled Super Contra. Not quite sure why they chose to drop the Contra and just go with Super C here, but whatever. Also, something worth noting, Super C and Super Contra are way harder than the original games on their respective hardware. Like, way harder. However, Super C's difficulty is, how should I say it, pretty unbalanced. Level 1 right here is probably one of the harder levels in the entire game, so is level 2. A couple of the made-up levels are actually harder. Alright, so pretty much not a great weapon I got, but I got an extra life, so whatever. Alright, now we have the spread shot, finally. Now we can wreck some shit up. But, yeah, you can see I am basically using save states basically all over the place. Admittedly, I found myself in a group, so I never resorted to save states, but yeah. When you see a bunch of frequent save states, it's usually because I had a really tough time at this section, if not in the entire level. So I just deleted all the in-betweens here. Alright, so I'm using a sit here because this section is going to be quite difficult to try to dodge the guys coming out of the chopper. I think things are good. Alright, we took out the chopper. Now, you might not think this game is longer because in the arcade original, there is actually still more level after this. For the NES version, the level ends right here. Don't worry, because they make up for it by adding 3 new levels into the mix, including 2 at the very end, and 1 in the middle. So my objective here is to just keep my distance so I can avoid the middle fire and try to adjust my space a little bit. Alright, we already took him out. I do this again. You want to be somewhat in the middle when taking out these tanks, so they have no choice but to aim at the middle. Because that's actually the easiest spot to dodge. I'm just taking some precautions here. Don't want the laser. I do not want the laser. In the NES Contra games, you basically have no need for any of the power-ups other than the spread shot. Not only are the swarm of enemies generally way harder than the bosses themselves, but because the bosses are generally pretty huge, you can absolutely tear through them rather quickly with the spread shot anyways. But wait until we get into the SNES and Sega Genesis games, because in the Genesis version, you don't always have access to the spread shot, and in the SNES version, you are actually given incentive to use other weapons because some deal more damage. So I go for the side turrets first before I go for the main gun in the middle. This time, the electric fence is actually pretty deadly. So try to keep your distance if you can. And there we go, we beat another level. This level was a little hard, not too hard. I think I only struggled in like a couple sections in the middle. So, I said that there was 2 levels, 3 new levels, with 2 of them added in at the very end. Well, this is because they technically split up VOG level 3, or was it level 4? I don't remember, into 2 parts. Right? Well, actually, no, that's not true either. I think they just added another level in the middle. So I'm being really because of that turret. That turret gave me so much problems. I literally had to jump over it just so I could get past this section. Oh. But yeah, I think this is a pretty decent candidate for hardest level in the game because you have enemies popping up everywhere. They have firearms, and a lot of these enemies can be real damage sponge. This time around. You know what? I think there might be another level that is an even bigger contender for hardest level in the game. It's coming up real shortly, and you literally have to just stop and spin around and just hit these guys because these guys are fast. So you absolutely have to spend a bit of time trying to catch them. Oh yeah, and So, my objective, you want to jump on here. Ideally, you stay on top of this guy. And eventually, I sort of came to realize I'm not actually hitting the boss. I'm hitting the top, which doesn't seem to damage him, so... Yeah, unfortunately, you can only really damage him on the sides. Because they want to make sure that you can actually... I can hear it. You can only damage him on the sides because the developers want to make sure that you actually have to evade. Oh, that was close. I thought it was a goner there. Alright, but there's more level. Like that being passed. At least we actually have full movement control in this game, unlike in Castlevania. I will say, though, I really do appreciate the incorporation of spectacle here. Scope and spectacle that simply wasn't present in the original Contra on NES. I do think it's probably one of the reasons why I think Contra 2 has such wildly unbalanced difficulty compared to the original game. And I do think it's the inclusion of spectacle probably plays a role in that. But you do you if you like this game more than the original. Because they're still outstanding games. There isn't... Unlike, say, the 8 Castlevania games that I played Castlevania month, or even the 6 Mega Man games I will cover here, there really isn't a stinker in the entire Contra Anniversary Collection. All 7, the closest is probably the original Contra in the arcade. But otherwise, every game in this collection is a winner. Even then, the OG Contra on the arcade is still pretty... It's okay, it's fine. So I think this was a level that was added into the NES version. This was not originally in the arcade original. And it is a really... And similar to level 3, this is a super long level. I thought those fell automatically, but no, you actually have to shoot down those items, those little bridge things. So I had to think about the direction I want to go, and ultimately I decided that this direction is simply a little safer. This thing is actually more of a nuisance than the other one. The other one will never be able to hit you through a wall. Alright. Oh yeah, I'm using a ton of save states in this level, probably the most of any level in this playthrough, because this level's kind of hard, which is kind of funny because these automated sections are pitifully easy. It's everything else in this level that is hard. The reason why is because there's basically no enemies. There's basically no obstacles that you need to worry about. So it's actively super easy to avoid everything. Oh, with those turrets, I was starting to feel a little cautious since I kept using save states. It's one thing to use a save state at the beginning, or where I do right now, but it's... Another spread shot. These bubbles are gonna just home in on you now. Oh yeah, you would think, oh, this section would be automated, but no, it is still automated. Since even though there are still platforms you can go up, no, it's automated. Now for the boss fight, and this is what James Roll had to call it. Yep, it's literally like a shower head. That is the boss of this stage, is like a laser spewing shower head. Out of the way, because... I really had to use an emergency save state for this section because this part gave me problems. But otherwise, this is still a pretty easy boss. Of course, I thought there might be more to this than that because I felt, but no, there was more of it than that. Probably because level 3 trained me to expect, as well as the arcade original trained me to expect more after that initial fight, but no, there wasn't. And now, all of a sudden, we went from arguably the hardest level in the game to arguably its easiest level. Seriously. I think what makes these sections easy is that, first of all, I think Konami did not want to run the risk of having any serious lag, because there's a ton of objects in the way. I'm gonna ignore that extra life. And because of this, enemies generally do not spawn from the bottom to try to follow after you. Only those flying enemies would do that. And because of this, it's kind of funny that these platforms are literally floating in the air now. They're not even part of like a cliff in the foreground. This is literally a sky drop. So yeah, I barely had to worry about any save states at all. And the save states I did use were mostly just for safety, as opposed to, oh, I really need them. Like that save state right there was to add no edits in between, because it's probably the hardest boss of the game here, because those enemies are tight. Those enemies are super, super tiny. You're better off just jumping over them and just hitting the sky whenever possible, because that takes care of the other projectiles that rain down on you. Otherwise, yeah. Probably the hardest boss of the game. Now we're at level 6. This was originally the 5th level of the arcade originals, which was Super Contra. It was also originally the final level. I'm trying to carefully navigate this section because that section full of giant mouths and projectile spewing spider crabs. Oh yeah, these and also those spawn homing spiders too. Or I guess you could call them homing ticks. I also had to watch out for. Now this section is still plenty hard, but it kind of loses its luster as the hardest level in the game once you get to the boss fight itself. Because the boss in the arcade original was really hard. Unfortunately, the NES cannot handle fully They came pretty close, unlike in the NES original version of all these other bosses, of all its bosses. But in the NES version of Super C, the bosses are made. This boss fight literally cannot run exactly the same way as it did the arcade because it would be too much sprites on the field at once. So they took some huge liberties, and those huge liberties actually make this boss an absolute giant cakewalk. Literally this is literally the most dangerous phase, and so long as you focus your efforts on the face with your spread shot, it's gonna tear through its health super quick. And you want to do the same thing for phase 2 here, because we no longer have to worry about the left or right membranes this time, and there's only like a single thing shooting coming out here. Just focus on your efforts here, point blank. Absolutely easy. Don't even need to worry about anything else. Now these two levels are brand new for the NES original. But don't worry, had that been the final boss, that would have been one hell of an anticlimax. Even though it would have been faithful to the original game. Oh, now we have to worry about... I'm just gonna work my way down. The funny thing is, the one level they added in the middle is super easy, super hard, and yet the final two levels are mostly super easy. I gotta wait till those power-ups go away before I could go down. I've jumped over the face huggers, and now hitting these xenomorphics is gonna be a lot harder. This time they literally just hatch multiple face huggers infinitely until you kill them off. So they're more like face hugger bulbs as opposed to eggs. I mean, they do sort of look like flower buds, actually. And this boss is pathetically easy. All you have to do is shoot those purple blobs, as well as the center thing when it's closed. And of course the skull head up top. Yeah, pitifully easy. Literally the only thing that made that boss tricky was the fact that you have to jump and hit him while pointing the gun up. That's it. Now for the final level. And this is very much reminiscent of the final level of the original Contra. Wonder if we'll be facing a giant heart this time around. I gotta wait for the power. I think it's just the angle. I didn't like the angle that power-up was on, so. And now we are taking on miniature xenomorphs. As well as xenomorph heads. So yeah, this final level takes heavy inspirations from Ridley Scott's Alien. Even the final boss of this game, spoiler alert, takes heavy inspiration from Ridley Scott's Alien. And more specifically, his version of the xenomorphs, which has its origins with Prometheus. For anyone who saw the movie, yes, Prometheus came out in 2012, but that was still Ridley Scott's vision as it reflected back to the xenomorphs. So there was like no xenomorph queen or anything like that, but there was simply the Promethean. The Prometheus is the name of the ship. I forgot what they were called originally. From the aliens from Prometheus, who created the humans. I think they're like called collectors or something like that. The creators of humanity, more or less. Basically, playing God created something they shouldn't have created. Those were the xenomorphs. That's how they originally came to be. Just try out just outrun this section. You'll be fine. This is a bit of a tricky level, but it's not the hardest level in the world, but this is definitely the hardest boss in the game. So, I told you, this comes from Ridley Scott's Alien specifically, not the Alien franchise as a whole, because this is a direct reference to the creator race playing God from the original Alien that led to the creation of the space huggers, and by extension the xenomorphs themselves. So yes, Contra is basically a hodgepodge of Ridley Scott's Alien, Arnold Schwarzenegger Predator, and Rambo. And Sylvester Stallone in Rambo. In other words, all the coolest 80s action iconography you could think of, except Alien was 1979. And just like that, we've beaten this game in just under a half hour. Fortunately, I don't like the end credits of this game as much as I did the arcade original. Kinda lame, and unfortunately there's no Japanese exclusive one in the main menu. Technically, there is a sub-menu featuring all the Japanese versions of all the other Contra games that are available in the main collection. Apart from the OG, of course, but they're basically the same game. And I'm not gonna play those games a second time if I can help it. Otherwise, I don't like this game as much as I do the original Contra, but I still think this is a pretty darn good game in its own right. Maybe a top 10 candidate. But will we be playing Contra 3 next time? Is that the next Contra game, so to speak? Tune in to find out. Otherwise, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. I greatly appreciate it. With all the way, this is Mike Gorin. Sign out.